Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today for my presentation on experiential learning theory. My name is Tracy Mendolia Moore, and I am a third-year PhD student in the Learning Technologies program at the University of North Texas. Let's jump in and get started. During this presentation, we'll be talking about Kolb's experiential learning theory. And by the end of this presentation, you will be able to define Kolb's theory of experiential learning. You'll also be able to recall details about Kolb's life and his education, and you'll be able to list examples about how Kolb's theory can be applied within an educational setting. So in Kolb's 1984 research titled Experiential Learning, Experience as a Source of Learning, and development, he stated, quote, "Learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience." This is a really good statement that summarizes his overall work, which we'll discuss here in just a moment. So the framework for Kolb's experiential learning theory, as you can see here, is a real comprehensive framework that highlights the cyclical nature of learning and development. It suggests that individuals learn best through a continuous process of experiencing, reflecting, conceptualizing, and experimenting. So by engaging in concrete experiences or having the learner do it themselves allows for learning to occur. And then by taking a step back and thinking about your experiences, reflective observation occurs. And when abstract conceptualization happens, learners can think about how their new knowledge or experience fits into everything else they already know about the world. And then lastly, the act of experimentation, learners can solidify new ideas where they can consider how they would apply their new knowledge, skills, and experience. Additionally, Kolb's theory includes four learning styles, which are outlined in the four quadrants within the circle. And these learning styles include diverging, which identifies how people feel and watch as part of their learning preferences. These people tend to be emotional and imaginative. The next quadrant is assimilating, and this is where learners prefer to think and watch and have a more logical way of learning new content. The converging learning style is comprised of problem solvers who think and do their way to find practical solutions or approaches. And then the folks who have an accommodating learning style prefer to have a hands-on learning approach and prefer to use or act on their gut instincts. So you can get access to Kolb's experiential learning profile, what they call KELP, through his website for a nominal fee of $35, or you can gain access to a free test through EduLog. Both of these survey links will be provided at the end of our presentation with links for you to go ahead and take them yourself. So David Kolb, who, what, when, where, why? David Kolb was born on December 12th in 1939. Today he's approximately 84 years old and currently lives in Hawaii with his wife, whom he's also created multiple research projects with. Kolb received his bachelor's degree from Knox College in 1961 and then went on to Harvard in 1964, where he completed his master's degree and then eventually completed a PhD in 1967. Kolb has published multiple papers and articles, but his most famous publication comes from that 1984 work that's titled Experiential Learning, Experience and as the Source of Learning and Development, which has been cited in nearly 30,000 works and has been read by nearly 500,000 viewers, and this is according to ResearchGate. The main influencer for this article, or influencers for this, for Kolb's article, was research that was previously done by John Dewey, Kirk Lewin, and Jean Piaget. All of these influencers have contributed articles and research of some sort relating back to experiential learning. So according to the Mensa Education and Research Foundation, one of The significant researchers that were influenced by Kolb's work was James E. Zull, who wrote a few books, one titled The Art of Changing the Brain and another From Brain to Mind. Both of his books can be found on Amazon if you're interested in learning more about that. Additionally, in 2018, um, Kolb did an interview with Het Oswis Drat Door, and he asks Kolb as part of this interview who will be taking the helm and leading this research in the future. Kolb notes that there are multiple people that are continuing the research, but he specifically identifies Christopher Kays from George Washington University, Maya Trin from Arizona State University, and Angela Pescarelli from Charleston's Case Western Reserve University. But note, as an aside, it should be noted that all of these individuals mentioned by Kolb are also connected to Kolb's Institute for Experiential Learning, which develops and provides free and paid learning opportunities that are based on Kolb's theory. So there might be some bias there with his selections. That being said, let's take a brief look at his interview from 2018.
About with regard to the scientific world, who is continuing your work when you're finished doing what you do? Who's next?
Oh, there are many people who are doing experiential learning work all over the world, and many former students. Chris Kays, who's the chairman of the business department at George Washington University. Mai Trin, who is at Arizona State University. Angela Passarelli, who's at College of Charleston. There are just many. Now, I haven't mentioned a lot of other people, which is always a problem with starting with names. But so there are many, many people who, whether they continue to contribute to experiential learning or whatever, they're very talented people and will find productive ways to express themselves, I'm sure.
We'll pause it there, but yes, that was Kolb's interview in 2018, so about 5 years ago. You can see that he's happily set in his garage in Hawaii there.
Well, I am.
So taking a look at a couple of studies, so examples. In this example here, this example is titled Kolb's Experiential Learning Theory and its Application in Geography and Higher Education. In this study, Healy and Jenkins discuss how Kolb's experiential learning theory offers a structured approach for designing sessions or entire courses in geography using this as a learning cycle. In this article, they have outlined how each stage of the cycle corresponds with the specific learning stages, and they have applied the research and provided multiple examples of how Kolb's theory can be developed into a practical application within the field of university geography. So utilizing this example here, we can see how Healy and Jenkins applied Kolb's concrete experience stage, or CE, to stage one of their lesson plan, creating a foundation of content knowledge by asking students to read content from multiple sources, stating that this gives them a substitute concrete experience. And you can see our line connection to that here, concrete experience to their stage one. So in stage two, Healy and Jenkins move on to reflective observation and organize student groups where students can discuss their views on what they had learned. As stated, quote here, students are being required to reflect back on their reading and are being primed for the next theoretical stage. So that's this connection here, stage two to reflective observation. As the lesson plan moves on to stage three, abstract conceptualization is developed through short length, is developed through a short length lecture, which fleshes out some of the key ideas and research variances. And then in the last segment of this lesson plan design, using Kolb's experiential learning model, they apply their new knowledge within their small groups by focusing on one element that they learned during the session, and then developing a poster or presentation that illustrates how that chosen element applies to the overarching subject matter. And you can see that connection here. So in the end, the researchers suggest that Kolb's theory can be a useful tool for instructors in a variety of subject areas. They also note that the instructors should be mindful of how their own learning preferences can affect the way they teach and how their courses are structured, and should avoid the dangers of favoring one teaching strategy over another. So let's take a look at example 2. This example is titled Mobile Augmented Reality Based on Multimodal Inputs for Experiential Learning. And in this example by Hashem et al., they sought out to identify if incorporating multimodal inputs in Kolb's experiential learning model can be used as a framework for developing a multimodal based AR application for learning environments. Here in this example, we can see how Kolb's theory is used similarly to the last example and is parsed out as to be a design framework shown here. Hashi et al. Applied Kolb's framework to evaluate how the implementation of learning technologies can be segmented within each phase of the experiential learning cycle. So breaking it down a little bit further, in their phase 1, you can see how concrete experience is connected from Kolb's cycle over to their research design. And the authors initially identified and tagged the user's emotions before using a decision tree to help a personalized response to the learner's emotional state. For instance, this is quote, for instance, if the emotional input is happy, the marker input is happy, and the research input is also happy. Then the output will be a 3D smiley model overlaid on the AR view to indicate a positive response. That's happening here in phase 1. As part of phase 2 and the reflective observation that you see, the researchers asked the learners to reflect on their experience with the AR technology that was used in phase 1. Learners were asked to identify a vocabulary word or a phrase that they had learned as part of phase 1. For phase 3, phase 3 right here, learners were asked to use abstract conceptualization by considering their new insights from the previous phases, and then match their experiences and new knowledge with the videos that were provided to develop their own generalizations about the learning topic. And then in the last phase here, the active experimentation phase, they tested the original learning outcomes and again asked the students to identify their emotions, which was then applied to the same AR technology used in phase 1, and then they were asked to verbalize their emotions. Overall, the study concluded that the outcomes demonstrated had a more favorable effect on the learning system with 3 multimodal inputs in terms of the learning efficiency, mental load, engagement, competency, and the challenge. The researchers noted that this study adds to the body of knowledge by offering a framework for adding multimodal inputs to a portable augmented reality learning system. Yet they also conclude that the additional research should be done to extend this type of framework. Oops, so let's take a look at example 3. This example implementing Kolb's experiential learning cycle by linking real experience, case-based discussion, and simulation. So in another example, we can see how Kolb's theory is applied as a framework to be used in medical case-based learning simulations. This example combined the concrete experience and the reflective observation, these two here, they combined these two and used them as a bookend for their course design. The goal of this research was to connect different approaches to patient cases using Kolb's theory to strengthen the learning process. So in the first example, or the first step of the example, the students were given the patient's chief complaint. And a chief complaint is basically what the patient walks in and says that they're struggling with, whatever it might be. The students use their experience, their knowledge, and reflect on and reflection to develop an understanding of this patient's symptoms and to help think through some of the next steps towards a diagnosis. During the abstract conceptualization phase, which links to their phase 2 here, the students learn more about clinical reasoning related to the patient and use previous knowledge and experience to tease out possible diagnoses and treatment ideas. And then in the example of step 3, we're using active experimentation. And here, and that's right here, um, the students are practicing these concepts with standardized patients. And standardized patients are paid actors that pretend to have the same chief complaint that was represented in step 1 of this example. And then the last step, we're coming back to that bookend and combining concrete experience with reflective observation and those phases, which allows students to reflect on the new experience that they had just gained from this activity. So, as part of the article's discussion points, the researchers note that according to the evaluations, students highly value the discussion centered around their own experience with patient cases and the opportunity to engage in practice. Additionally, the feedback and interaction with the instructors were constantly seen as highly beneficial by the students. And then to expand upon this research, the authors note that, quote, it would be very useful to examine what students do better next time they see similar patients in practice or in a simulated environment. Personally, in this case, I feel a good next step for this research would be to compare the learning outcomes of these Kolb scenarios with assessment to see if the students retain more when Kolb is, or the Kolb theory design is implemented in this case. So moving on, so what? Who cares? Kolb created his framework in 1984. Maybe some of you weren't even born yet. But during the course of time, folks have elaborated on this framework. They have tested his framework. They have done additional iterations and branched off of this framework. So a lot of work has been done here. Overall, Kolb's theory of experiential learning is a robust framework that can be used for designing and facilitating effective learning. One value of Kolb's learning theory is that it recognizes the importance that experience holds within the learning process. Kolb's theory can be used as a framework that has the potential to help educators optimize their teaching strategies that can potentially increase student learning outcomes. Also, this theory connects the students' real world examples, their skills, and their scenarios, and it connects it to the formal in classroom learning to those and provides weight to those valuable personal experiences. And one surprising outcome, at least for me, is that this theory can be used as a tool to help design and structure classroom learning. So that was new for me. So what's next? As promised at the beginning of our presentation today, these are 2 links where you can locate a survey questionnaire that will help to identify your personalized learning preference based on Kolb's theory. I took the free version of this survey and my results were actually pretty accurate. So take a look. And here are all my references that were utilized for today's presentation. And wrapping it up, we've come full circle around the full roundabout. Kolb's presentation or Kolb's theory reminds me of just the roundabouts that you see all over Europe. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please shoot me an email. Let me know. I am open and would love to hear your feedback on what you have learned today, or if you have used Kolb's experiential learning theory in the past or have ideas on how you can expand upon this theory in the future. Would love to hear more. So thank you all for listening, and I appreciate your time.